Costa is brought to you by FQM Trident Limited, a subsidiary of First Quantum Minerals Limited.
President Hakainde Hichilema recently declared that the ongoing drought is a national disaster and emergency. This dry spell is projected to result in an energy sector deficit of approximately 450 megawatts, potentially extending up to 500. Such a shortfall is anticipated to have adverse effects on the country's economy, particularly impacting operations and agriculture. On tonight's edition of Costa, we discuss Zambia's energy sector and the potential of its exponential growth. Remember that today, the world and the broadcasting sector celebrated the International Children's Day of Broadcasting under the theme Children's Voices, Children's Rights, Collective Responsibility. So happy ICDB Day, and at Diamond TV we did celebrate in that manner. And thank you to all the young people that came through from around 8 up until later on at 6 to take over the airwaves. Before we introduce my guest, let's take a short break. Good evening, welcome back to Costa. My name is Costa Mwansa. You're watching us live on channel 271 on DStv. It's also channel 20 on GOtv. It's Diamond TV Zambia on our Facebook platform as well as YouTube. My guest this evening is Dr. Johnstone Chikwanda, a Zambian national based in Lusaka who has served before as chairperson of the boards of the directors of Indeni Petroleum Refinery, the Rural Electrification Authority REA. He has also served as a member of the board of directors of Zambia's Energy Regulation Board, ERB. Last year, Dr. Chikwanda was part of a team of consultants who prepared the current strategic business plan for the Energy Regulation Board for the year 2022 to 2026. He's my guest on Costa this evening to discuss an array of issues in the energy sector as we are amidst a drought which poses a threat to issues around energy and hydropower. We'll also be discussing issues around fuel procurement and really the crisis that has rocked the energy sector. Dr. Chikwanda, always a pleasure. Good evening and welcome to Costa.
Good evening Costa, good evening viewers. Thank you so much for hosting me on your program.
Great. Now let's get straight into it. The dry spell really is before us, and projection is that this may result in about 450 to 500 megawatts lost in terms of our hydropower capacity. This is not the first time that Zambia is going through, such a crisis. 2015 and 2018. The big question is, what lessons did we learn?
Yeah, indeed, we are faced with this unfortunate situation. Like you have correctly pointed out, this is not the first time that we have gone through this kind of doldrums. I remember 2015, we went through a severe power shortage and energy poverty. And also 2018, we had quite a similar arrangement where we had power load sharing of 12 to 18 hours in some instances. Even before then, we have had that. So I think the problem that we've been facing as a country is not that we don't know what we are supposed to do. It's an implementation issue, because when you read through the 6th National Development Plan, you could see that the country was already trying to position itself for adequate diversification of the energy portfolio. The same image, actually even accentuated, can be seen in the 7th National Development Plan. In a very big way, we're supposed to diversify, but we could not adequately diversify. So the issue lies with implementation of our national development plans. The plans are excellent, they are good, but the implementation thereof, that is where we seem to have been missing it as a country.
And now we're obviously in the 8th National Development Plan that encapsulates into the vision, 2030, some of it into vision 2064. How then can we actualize some of these things when, for example, we take a look at allocation towards, the budget, the budgetary allocation towards things like just the Ministry of Environment? I mean, climate change is here to stay. We are really not doing so much in insofar as carbon emission fighting, but even just projects around investment in the energy sector. When you look also at diversification, how much have we really done when it comes to issues of R&D, research and development? Yes, there is solar, but up to now, officially, there's very little solar going into the main ZESCO grid. We've got, Mamba doing coal-powered, power that is fed into ZESCO, about 300 megawatts. How much are we doing in terms of the energy mix diversification?
To be honest with you, we haven't done well. We're not coming from a decent position because of legacy issues. However, when I look at what ZDA has received in terms of commitments, there is more than $6 billion of commitments in the energy sector, which is good. So we have been able as a country to attract good pledges, but it is the actualization, like I have said. So historically, we haven't just seemed to have done so well in terms of diversifying it adequately because of a number of issues, one of which was the tariff issue, was really inhibiting the investors from coming into the sector. But now the environment is being sanitized. We have ARB approved a multi-year tariff plan for almost 3 to 5 years, which is very good because that shows the direction of the tariff over a period of time, which is good news to an investor. So the tariff was one of the major hindrance hindering the energy development sector. It was one of the things was the tariff. So the tariff is being worked out and improved upon. So we can expect that there is going to be sufficient actualization of the investment pledges that we have received as a country. Because there's no investor who is going to put money in a place where they know that they won't be able to recover. So we have had a problem in the sector, and that is why we have had all these energy sector reforms which have been running for the past 20 years, just improving the systems, repealing the regulatory frameworks, and up to where we are now. I think we've, in a significant way, managed to restructure the tariff, though it's not yet where it's supposed to be, but we have managed. And the same was revealed by the cost of service, the cost of electricity service study, which was...
I was actually going to come to that, Dr. Chikwanda. The issue of tariffs has been one thorny one for a very, very, long time. And obviously the way around this was through a cost of service, study. The last we heard of this was that a UK-based firm was hired to do this survey at a cost of almost £500 million, pounds. You're a consultant. Anything coming out in terms of whether as a country we've completed this cost of service study? Because coupled with just the issue of tariffs is also the optimal or effective viability of ZESCO as the sole power provider for the country, bringing in a lot of off-takers. Is ZESCO operating viably, or it's sluggish because it's a monopoly? So let's start from just this cost of service study.
Yeah, the cost of service study was concluded by a European consultant who was engaged after several postponements, but also because of the COVID environment that went in. A report was presented. I think there was even a cabinet memo on that. The cabinet deliberated and released a paper which was being, circulated to get some comments and indicate to the people. So what that did to us, it showed that we're going to have certain number of specific challenges in the industry. It also highlighted ZESCO's precarious financial situation. It highlighted the deficit that we are going to face if we do not bridge the gap, and also that the tariff was below. It was not cost reflective, which we had always known, but the issue was to what extent and for which category of the customers. We have a different number of customers. So that paper was presented, and I want to believe that it was on the basis of that paper that an application was taken to ERB by ZESCO in order to secure a 5-year multi-year tariff adjustment plan, of which the first one was already approved, and we are waiting for the next one this particular year. With regard to the financial viability of ZESCO, to be honest with you, information in public domain is that ZESCO is in a very, very difficult situation.
We'll be coming to ZESCO's viability, but let's go back to the issue of tariffs. What does the cost of service study propose in terms of figures? The last we know, after the public hearings and very vivid, correct us, we had a 75% tariff plan, especially from a domestic perspective, where I think we did a 50% tariff hike, then it was 25, 25. There's a feeling, especially at, domestic, which is household and small scale level, that really tariffs are so high in comparison to big commercial industry. And by this now, I want to talk about, the mines. Furthermore, the country has a targeted projection under the current administration that within the next 10 years, we must be able to ramp up copper production to about 10 million metric tons. Within the next 10 years, we must ramp up to about 3 million metric tons, per year. Mines are expanding. You're talking about cobalt mining, you're talking about the new Munali nickel. So all these mines that are coming upstream plus industries need power. How are we looking at the capacity to provide power to new and big industries?
Yeah, that is where the challenge is. If as a country we do not ramp up power production, stable power production, that ambition of growing copper production to 3 million tons within the next 10 years may not be realized, because the mining industry is one of the biggest off-takers of power. In fact, it has contributed significantly to the development of the energy sector in this country through the pooling strategy, because it demands, and so we must invest. So if we do not arise as a country and invest sufficiently in the energy sector, we won't be able to realize that goal. And the only way we're supposed to do that is open up the space, which is what is emerging, because we have a lot of pledges like I have seen, and to actualize those investments so that we onboard a significant amount of power. When you look at the national consumption, our peak demand is still very small. It's 2,300 thereabout megawatts, which is quite small, because in some other countries, that is consumption for 2-3 companies only. And even when you look at countries like Japan, which is an island twice smaller than the size of Zambia, its installed capacity is bigger than the entire electricity installed capacity for Africa continent as a whole. Even Spain here, its installed capacity is bigger than the entire Comesa region. There are some airports that are consuming power, but that have got installed capacity which is even bigger than Lusaka province. So if we are to attract big investment, we really need to invest a lot in the energy sector. We must do all we can, and we must begin to live as if Kariba doesn't exist. That is how we should, the mindset. We must live as if Kariba Dam doesn't exist, because our system has been built around hydropower, and this has taught us repeatedly challenges, it taught us a lot of bitter lessons, and we seem to be just ricocheting in the same doldrum, again doldrum. So we need to arise. There must be a point of inflection where we say enough is enough. This is now our trajectory, and this is how we are going to go about. Which is one thing I have appreciated with the release of the integrated resource plan for the energy sector, which was recently released, I think 2 weeks ago. That paper is a roadmap which shows how we intend as a country to develop our energy sector over the next, up to 2050, with a specific focus, actually over the next 50 years, with specific focus over the next 30 years.
The challenge, like you said earlier, is can we bring these documents to actuality? It's the same thing with the national development plans and now this integrated plan. But let's look at the historical issues aligned with hydro generation capacity. You speak about a peak demand of about 2,300 megawatts. The last I checked, we were sitting at a figure of capacity pegged at around 3,300 as a country. When you put into perspective the refurbishments at Kafiwe lower hydro and Kafiwe Gorge in itself, then the expansions at Itezi, you look at the 300, is it 600 coming out of Mamba that they're producing, and then Kariba in itself, and the smaller ones. We seem to be so comfortable because SADC is affected, but we call ourselves a huge water resource with 60% of the waters within SADC. Should we be satisfied with our current megawatt capacity? And some also attribute, especially from an administrative point of view, that there was very or lack of investment in the energy sector for a long time.
We cannot be satisfied, not at all. First and foremost, our installed capacity is almost 3,400 megawatts, but our peak demand is way a lot below that, and which is about 2,300 plus about peak demand, meaning that our consumption still as a country is quite low. We have a huge market inside the country which is not connected to the grid, because our rural electrification, for instance, is 8%. 8%.
Well, what's our current national penetration
is
capacity?
about slightly above 35, slightly above 35%, national average, which is really, really low. It's one of the lowest.
Meaning that 65% of the country is not connected.
It's not connected. Meaning they are using other forms of energy, and it's worrisome for me because we signed up to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, of which one of them is SDG goal number 7, which calls for universal access to clean, affordable, and sustainable energy for all by the year 2030. Now, one thing which many people don't realize is that 8 SDGs, 8 of the 17, they depend on SDG goal number 7, which is a goal on energy. If you don't get that SDG correct, you are not going to deliver properly on the SDG, which talks to quality healthcare delivery, because to do that you need electricity. You are not going to do well with the SDG that covers education. You are not going to do well with the SDG which covers poverty eradication, gender and equality, so on and so forth. There are about 8 of them that are directly dependent on how you perform on SDG goal number 7. So if we are at 8% and we have got 5 years, 6 years remaining, then that calls for worry. We saw a huge jump in terms of budget allocation to Rural Electrification Authority, huge jump, more than 100%, I think, in the budget allocation 2022 coming to 2023. But again, it's our procurement and approval processes, because you can give so much money to a quasi-institution, but how is the money being deployed? Our procurement process, Costa, in this country, the approval processes, they are a nightmare. I don't know where we cut, but certainly we copied this approval journey from a country that was not in a hurry to develop. Because to set up an infrastructure in the energy sector, your customer journey starts with a battle with the chiefs to acquire the land, because the land is with the chiefs, and you know they have become so enlightened. Just to be through with the chiefs it's enough, maybe 3-4 months already done, just with a land acquisition. Then you start your conveyancing, because you need a title deed in order to go and unlock your financing. That process also, it will take you maybe 2 to 3 months. Then you come to the councils. Then you go to Zema. It would another 6 months or 1 year. Then you go to the apex institution, which is ERB. If there's no back and forth, maybe 6 months will be there. When you put these things together, the journey comes to about 1 year, 6 months. Oh, consistently ticking the boxes in good time. And that's where now you go in international procurement to import your equipment.
You had a privilege in sitting on
some of
these boards. Are these some of the challenges you faced as directors of these boards to navigate the procurement process?
Definitely, it's very, very big. It's you come up with a work plan, but then you have to go into procurement and contracts have to go to Attorney General, so on. The customer journey or the investor journey is not friendly in this sector, and the President has talked about it. We are all aware about it, but where are we? Why is it taking so much time to redesign the customer journey? There are certain processes that do not need to be sequenced one after another. They can run parallel and create a one-stop shop and finish off, because even this disaster that we are in, the response to it may be hampered by our cumbersome procurement and approval processes that we have. It may perforate those efforts, because everyone wants to operate within the confines of these roads, which take so long, and it is worrisome, to be honest with you.
Let's get back to the issue of installed capacity of 3,400 megawatts versus the demand of about 2,300. The viewer may be wondering, yes, then we have somewhere around 900 to about 1,000 megawatts extra. Why do we experience aspects of load shedding when actually 65% of the country's population is not even, connected to the grid? This brings in the issue of current existing, PPAs, power purchase, agreements, and like I said earlier on, we exist in what we call SAP, the Southern African Power Pool interconnectivity. So we're exporting as well as importing. And this problem, you have had the privilege of working within South Africa. Eskom has been quite terribly, hit. Zimbabwe, the situation as we speak is currently worse off, because they have no power from about 5 o'clock in the morning till about 9, 21 hours in the evening. What is the importance of these PPAs, and how do they set out frameworks that when you have a deficit, they still have to be recognized?
Yeah, first and foremost, we may appear to have more installed capacity than our peak demand, but that is the installed nameplate capacity. And when you factor in the efficiencies, maybe you find some of them are operating at 80% and even below thereabout. But also the issue is where is this power coming from? Like I have mentioned, our energy, our generation infrastructure is built around our water bodies, because that's where we have our arbitrage, and we don't just seem to get enough out of them. When you have, like in 2015, when we had that major water level challenge, we were told that it would take about 3 years to bring the water levels to a level that you are much comfortable with. And now we are told that the water levels are even unprecedentedly low, meaning they could be much lower than they were last time. So you cannot expect that lake to fill up with the next rain season. So we need, that's why I said initially that perhaps it is high time we started living as if Kariba doesn't exist. So it is the availability of the equipment, because we are trapped in what is known as an energy trilemma, where here you have got aging equipment that frequently falls off its wheels, and you have to continue fixing things. So there are a lot of availability of capacity issues as well, even if the installed capacity is up there. It's like you have a fleet of vehicles, 10, yet you only need about 6. But are they available? You find that some of them are offline, they're not very reliable, and so on and so forth. Coming to the issue of the power purchase agreements, which usually sign with independent power producers, And they have helped us a lot because ZESCO has been a monopoly, and now the market has been opened up for others to come in. But the trend that we noted is that the private sector was more comfortable to sell electricity to ZESCO. The reason being that the price of the electricity coming from the independent power producer is more expensive than what ZESCO has been selling to the market. So there is no customer who is going to buy directly from the independent power producer.
Is that not part of the reason why ZESCO is making a loss? The last I
Yes.
checked, I think ZESCO was producing at about, was it 6 kwacha per kilowatt hour? While I think it was about 9.
About 9 from 11.5.
From the IPPs.
On average, 11.5. So that means the heavy subsidizing which has been going on. I know some of them have been negotiated, but it still doesn't take the fact that
that was 6 cents.
About 6 cents,
to 9 cents.
To 11.5 on average. On average, I think they have moderated that. So that means that we've been buying electricity at a loss because Mamba is 300 megawatts, and then you put in ITT and these others, you aggregate them together, it's colossal amount of money there, which was being absorbed by ZESCO because you're buying it at an expensive price and you're selling it at a low price. You cannot come out of that because in a power purchase agreement, there is a killer clause which makes a power purchase agreement bankable. It is called the take or pay clause, meaning that what I have committed to you, you've got to take it, unless it is my problem that I'm not able to supply to you. Whether your transmission line have fallen off or you have built enough of your power plants, you cannot come to me and say, oh, now, this is 5 years since I signed off from you, 10 years I signed off from you, now I've got my own generation capacity, so I have to switch you off. No, it doesn't work like that. And this is where my guidance to ZESCO and my advice is that be very careful on how you onboard the independent power producers. There are some countries that are in very serious problems because they were forced because of the energy transition at a time that they were in doldrums like this, and they went into a frenzy onboarding independent power producers to the point where now that things have turned around, the power utility company is sitting with huge bills in the order of more than $5 billion, more than $10 billion owing to them in other countries.
Just on that clause that you've spoken about, the issue of taking that which you have committed. Again, this is a grey area where citizens need to really understand, Dr. Chikwanda, what you're saying. We're dealing mainly with ESCOM, and we know that the last minister was giving a statement to Parliament. I think we're owing ESCOM off of almost $40 million, plus there's some ship off the ocean, which we take off the coast of Mozambique. But from a layman's perspective, especially when we're anticipating load shedding, is how do we explain the fact that we're exporting and at the same time, importing? It really doesn't make sense for a layman.
Well, even in South Africa itself, it's in a very serious and unfortunate situation because South Africa is a big brother of Africa. It should not be facing a situation like that. But it's because they did not take necessary steps at a particular time. That is why they're in this kind of situation. They also have got some contracts to supply which are long-term. And they've got penalties, these contracts. They have got penalties. So if I come to you and say, look, I need so many megawatts from you, and can you commit? I want it for 10 years. And here is my money, here is my guarantee. If you don't do that, I'll penalize you, because where am I going to go to? And because at that particular time, you have excess power and you sign off, then when need comes, it will be a very big problem. You will have to suffer a lot of penalties in some of these contracts, depending on how you structured them. South Africa is still importing to some countries in the region, despite the situation, and importing from Mozambique, because now Mozambique has emerged like the industry statesman at the moment, coming to the rescue of a number of countries in the region. Zambia as well, I'm not very sure, but from the last information I saw in public media is that we are exporting something to Namibia, and I think in Zimbabwe there was something there. These are long-term. Yeah, these are long-term contracts.
But is it justifiable when we say we export at off-peak time?
It depends on the pricing as well. It depends on the pricing, because sometimes you may be selling at a premium price, and when you are importing, maybe you are also importing at off-peak time when the prices are low. So those figures, I think, they are privy to them, you know. But these again are bilateral agreements, and this is what we call energy diplomacy. So you have to be careful how you handle your neighbor who is whose face is down, whether you have to take even the read-through away from them because you have a challenge at home, or you are going to believe in sharing. So the realm of energy diplomacy is very, very complicated, and I think we are trying to respond to that.
One thing I get from you is you describe our situation as an energy trilemma. You call it. So first of all, ZESCO not operating viably. We have not done so well in terms of the energy diversification investment, and you're saying we must be forgetting about hydropower. Now, the only or part of the things that I see government promoting is incentives on, for example, waiving duty on solar importation. What about manufacturing and really creating industry around this? Apart from the fact that we've got water bodies and now rain is failing us, sun is one thing that we are blessed with as opposed to countries that are up north in Europe. They depend on things like, you know, now it's, what do you call it, gas? And now there is discovery of, we are trying to do it around Chongo uranium and so on, but quite a highly complex thing. Solar. We spoke about the French government and the EU trying to do a solar farm in the M phase. Other than that, where are we in terms of really putting solar into the grid and the energy mix? Is just duty waiver a big enough incentive to create this as a market?
Yeah,
or an industry, right? Yeah.
First and foremost, just to clarify further, when I say that we need to start living as if Kariba doesn't exist, what I meant is the vulnerability, the risk profile of depending on hydro is too high for the country. And we also note that the maximum capacity we can harvest from all our rivers is 6,000 megawatts. That is what studies have shown us. From all our rivers put together, maximum is 6,000 megawatts. When you look at the economic projection plan, when you look at the integrated resource plan for the country, where we are going to 30 years from now, even just 10 years from now, that copper production talking about, our demand will be in the range of 10,000 megawatts, and even going there, maybe one day we'll reach 20,000 megawatts. But the maximum we can get from hydro is 6,000. So there is an era which I call the post-dependence on hydro era. So if ZESCO remains trapped with hydro, 10 years from now, 15 years from now, ZESCO can potentially remain a minority player in the electricity industry in Zambia, which should not be acceptable.
Because rivers are not increasing, but the industrial capacity is increasing.
It should not be acceptable, because this is a national power utility company, meaning that it must be sufficiently participating in onboarding its own renewable energy directly or in joint venture, like what they are trying to do with the Mazda of the UAE. That is a commendable job, because if you just rely on IPPs, there will come a time that they will lock you in the take or pay clause to the point that you won't be able to escape. 10 years from now, 15 years from now, you remain a minority. And when the infrastructure energy is lying in the hands of the private sector, that is not one of the good balances that you want to see, because energy security is directly related to national security. Back to the other question which talks to incentivizing the sector development. There are a number of interventions. Perhaps what we should be attracting as well is the manufacturing of the solar panels in the country, and other accessories like batteries and so on and so forth. We should be doing that. And there is this joint venture we're trying to do with the Congo, which will help us with the battery technology. They will go to the electric industry. So we need to provide more incentives, more development, more onboarding of our own local people to take ownership in the sector, because the sector itself is one of the sectors which is very crucial. You need to entrench some of your own people in the platform itself, the energy sector platform, because we don't do that, you find that it is going to lie in the hands of foreign investors. But where are our local investors? We need them also.
When you look at the current global agenda on the international relations market, apart from issues of technology, artificial intelligence, economics and finance, climate change is at the heart of everything, and here the energy mix falls in, and I'm thinking of the COP conferences now taking center stage. It's no longer about just green activists, it's banks, it's financiers, it's technology, because that's the future actually of Earth and the human race. Have we jumped onto this flight, or we're still behind? I know we've created the Ministry of Green Economy and Environment, but is it just on paper and basically attending conferences? Is there a master plan, an energy master plan for Zambia?
That's a very good question. First and foremost, I would like to commend the government for establishing the Minister of Green Economy, because that's a minister that has been tasked with championing or driving the greening agenda for the country. And they have got a strategic plan which they are following there, which is a very good thing. There is a lot that is happening with the energy transition in Zambia. The regulatory framework also has to be realigned to support that. We're talking of the electric vehicles. We need to formulate the regulatory environment that will support that, because once these vehicles begin to come, where are they going to be charging from, and who is going to own them? Is it everyone? Can I have it at home, the charging station? And what is the standard that is required? The issue of standardization, because we don't want fake batteries. We want, because that will be now the energy cell. So you need to put a battery standard that should be accepted. At the moment, I don't think there is a standard that governs that. And then also, you need to realize that currently, government, Central Treasury, raises a lot of money from the fuel industry, from the oil industry, through taxation. That's why they raise a lot of money from there. So if you suddenly take that out and replace it with a electric vehicle industry, then you need to know that you are going to lose the revenue, because unless you come up with a very craft way of how you are going to charge the excise duty on those, the charging stations that are going to come in the country. So you can lose huge chunk of money that can have a lot of repercussions if you don't handle the transition well. This is where the just energy comes in, where as we are transitioning, can we please make sure that we do not perforate or dislocate other national perspectives, and such as how it will impact on other people, how it will impact the budget, and how certain assets that we have can end up being stranded if you rush the transition. So my take is that the country has been put on the correct driveway with regard to the transitioning agenda, the energy transition. I also take it that I think we are trying to determine our own pace within our own unique circumstances, because if you jump, you can create a lot of dislocations. A lot of assets can get stranded.
Are we on the right pace?
We are in the correct direction facing the right direction. Yes, and part of the reason, like you have said, that what we have seen so far in terms of solar plants are those in the M phase, which are less than 100 megawatts, and where else? There are a lot of projects that have been brought to Zambia. My gut feeling and my research is that a lot of projects, investment projects, are stuck somewhere within the lengthy procurement and approval processes. They're just stuck there.
Is the Mazda, project, the investment of $6 billion, the pledge that you spoke about, a game changer? We've also heard more recently about some British or UK consortium also trying to come into the solar and energy sector. Are these game changers?
They are literally game changers. First of all, I think Mazda is $2 billion, and then the UK, we've received some from there. There are a lot of them, and these are commitments, not just mere pledges. Once we begin to onboard them, and I think it will be in a phased approach, this country will never be the same. By now, Zambia should have been a significant net exporter of electricity to the region. The region must not be suffering this kind of energy poverty that the region is suffering with. If Zambia had taken its rightful position to emerge as a champion of energy supply, because the water bodies, in as much as we don't want to rely on them so much, we cannot completely forget about them, because some of them are in the northern circuit of the country, which has got better rainfall than on the southern circuit. But also we are blessed with abundant sunshine. I know wind, not too much, but there are certain areas which the resource mapping has shown that we can still do something, and also geothermal, we have to drill in the earth and to get the heat which is trapped there to generate electricity. The country is abundantly blessed with resources that are capable of making it a champion and a beacon of hope for the
But region. We're still sleeping somewhere.
Yeah.
We're still sleeping somewhere. Before we get to issues around fuel and petrol, also quite controversial issues there, there's a new term that has emerged in terms of green economic financial markets, green bonds. What are these, Dr. Chikwanda? We heard that at the just ended COP 29, Copper Belt Energy Corporation had launched a bond of $200 million, What are green bonds, and what does this mean for a country like Zambia in terms of opportunities? What are companies like CEC trying to really achieve and do really?
I think CEC, first and foremost, it is good to recognize how the company has emerged, and it is literally evolved as an industry statesman and a showpiece of what private sector can do. And it has over the years been depending on ZESCO power for reselling. It has been more like a reseller of what ZESCO is producing. It will get from there, then it will resupply. It also imports in certain instances. So it has been an electricity trader, so to speak. And that position, I believe, in terms of their long-term strategic mapping, is not sustainable, because where you are getting this power from, one day they will want to start supplying directly to certain clients. So in terms of building its sustainability plan, it has started to invest. It started anyway to invest in its own generation capacity, and it is diversifying in the renewable energy. So it has to raise capital from either the banks or from the capital markets. So one of the ways you can raise money is to issue a bond. And because it's a green economy, it's in the green economy that we are projecting that these funds are supporting investment within the framework of the green economy. That's why they are labeled as green bonds. Otherwise, in a layman's language, it's just to raise money from the capital markets to try and finance renewable energy products, projects like solar energy.
Let's now tackle fuel, an important ingredient towards the cost of doing business. I mean, the wheels of the economy run on petrol, whether it's diesel, kerosene, jet, A1 fuel for transportation, whether it's vessels on sea, it's trains, it's motor vehicles, bus fares, power, through gensets and all that. And there's been this huge cry, I think. Petrol becomes a political issue on how, first of all, the pump price of petrol per litre has jumped from 2021 at about 19 kwacha per litre of petrol to almost the last few days ago, when the ARB reviewed, was now sitting at around 31 kwacha, per litre. And there's been this cry in terms of the fuel pricing mechanism, with monthly review prices where people are complaining that this is not helping. You have been quoted all the time in the media trying to analyze both the global scenario on the international market vis-a-vis barrel prices, exchange rates, wars in Ukraine, wars now in Israel and Gaza, and how they have an adverse effect on the domestic market. But that doesn't really matter for a person who has very minimal income and wants to pay bus fares, wants to buy paraffin, and they don't understand. Let's break it down.
Yeah, first and foremost, let me do justice to this question. Unfortunately, you cannot discuss the energy sector, the petroleum industry, without talking about politics, because it's a political issue. That is why energy diplomacy has now evolved as an instrument to manage the international energy sector, because it is just so political. As a country, from 2019, when the pump prices started to go up, the past administration decided to take out customs duty at 25% as a way of containing the prices. And we came into 2020, the prices were still building up. Government went in and took out excise duty. And still things were not abated. Government went in and again took out VAT. So as we were crossing 2021, there was no taxes on the fuel prices. All of them had been waived, suspended. By implication, because those taxes, when you add them, excise duty, VAT is 16%, customs duty is 25%. Just those two alone is 41%, if I'm not mistaken. 16 plus 25, that's 46. And then you take out, put in excise duty as well. Over 50% of taxes were taken out.
And that is what was the component of the pump price. It was,
pump price.
It was over 50%
taken out.
Yes. Of the price was tax.
Yes. So when you go for that kind of haircut, you will cramp the pump prices that low. That is why they were sitting. Where they were sitting was not where they were supposed to.
So the citizen would say that was commendable. That was commendable.
But what was the implication of that? More than $1 billion United States dollars was being lost every year. We are not collecting it because 25%. I know the import bill per year as a country, because we are consuming about 1.4 billion liters. And so the import bill, then you begin to take out this tax at 25%, 16% VAT, all this.
So in short, government had to cushion that?
Yes, $1 billion was not being collected from the industry. Now, if you're not going to collect $1 billion from the industry, believe me, you, Costa, it is going to show. You are going to fail to employ people. You are going to fail to put medicine in the hospitals. You are going to fail to pay suppliers. There is a lot of things that you are going to fail to do because you are cushioning this side, and it will harm you. The same people that were trying to cushion, now when they go to the hospitals, they don't find medicines, they find all these things falling apart, it will again come back. So achieving a balance sometimes not easy. It's like being taught to walk over eggshells without breaking them. So that was a cost that was faced. But to the consumer, it was Christmas time because the price looked that low. So when we crossed
2021,
the decision was, should we keep the decision with government, should it keep those same wealth taxes, or should they be brought back? So we saw new government started to bring back these taxes, increase on excise duty, VAT came back. It was being done in a phased approach. But up to now, customs duty is still waived, because if it was put in there, it was, the price is not supposed to be where it is. So there is still a waiver which is still in place, which is an indirect subsidy, which is still there. But the issue is that, to me, to manage the pump price, it's not just about taxation. You can change also the procurement process.
Before you go further, I think the question we want to hear from you as an expert, because the politicians, and I love the way you've broken down what transpired under the previous administration. The current administration said that the cost plus model that was used in the previous administration needed to be done away with. And one of the things that the president spoke about was that we needed to remove the component of middlemen in the fuel procurement to make it, you know, cheaper. I think that is one of the equations that they were putting around. So, in your view, first of all, let's begin by breaking down what is the current, you know, procurement structure in terms of how we are doing it. Others feel that, I mean, is it true that government has completely let off and it's entirely on the supply and demand with the OMCs, no subsidy whatsoever involved?
The subsidy which is still there is the customs duty, which has been waived. And of course, we still have another subsidy which people don't talk about because they don't know it. It's called a cross subsidy, which makes it possible to have a uniform pump price throughout the country. There is a segment of consumers along the line of rail who are subsidizing the pump price for those that live in the faraway places. So that is called the subsidy. Otherwise, the further you go away from the country, the more people are supposed to pay. Previously, we had each town at its own price. And that happens also even in Botswana, South Africa. Different towns are charging different, but here we've kept that because of that subsidy. The current procurement, yes, government has partially stepped us away, especially from petrol side. But from diesel perspective, because of the pipeline, government is issuing tenders to companies that must use the pipeline. And that can bring inefficiencies, because what we want is government to completely stay away. But that infrastructure is state-owned. So it means that it's still a long way before government can come out of that. By and large, the petroleum industry is got a lengthy structure. And because it starts with the owners of the oil wells, then the owners of the refineries, because you can own an well, but you don't own the refinery. Then you have got all these global traders, where you cannot just go there and buy. You find maybe this refinery has only got 10 big global customers, your Trafigulas, your Grencos, name them. Then those supply to different countries. When you come here, you have the oil company, then it brings the fuel in the country, then it goes to the liter. So by design, the journey is lengthy. But also if government is finding its way in, it even makes it longer. So what you want, the ideal situation is maybe government step aside. And what else that you can do is, for instance, within the context of that statement, that can we eliminate this? Yes, we can. And one of the methods is a bilateral agreement, where government to government procurement arrangement.
But in the current scenario, the citizen really feels that it is hurting the domestic household, it is hurting the small industries, the businesses, where government is aside and you leave it to the whims of the market and the OMCs, that the prices are just too high. Is it beneficial at this moment for government to stay away?
Well, I think that is debatable, because usually when the markets are very stable and the fundamentals are stable, your exchange rate is stable, the prices are stable, and you have managed to bring the prices down a bit, maybe you can try to refrain. But if the environment is very hostile, you may be sucked in to try and intervene, because it's a very sensitive sector. The global industry, by 2019-2020, 2020 itself, it had spent more than $10 trillion to try and just subsidize, and this involved even the G20 countries and big countries. They were all subsidizing. So even the UK at one time went in to subsidize, the United States went in to subsidize, including releasing cheaper fuel from the international fuel reserves, which it has stockpiled. So there are different interventions that you can put in depending on the capacity of the country. So for Zambia, either you can waive a tax if you have got the capacity to find other forms of income, or you can invest in strategic fuel reserves, which we don't have, unfortunately, as a country. We have got the depots, but they are empty.
It's a good point you bring about, because the issue of strategic reserves, I remember as far back as the MMD under late President Rupiah Banda, there was this drive that we should have provincial energy reserves. You have had an opportunity to sit on the board of Indeni. Was this not part of the plan, that Indeni, apart from being a refinery, also served as a strategic reserves? And I mean, a couple of months ago we heard from the ERB itself that in 1 month where prices did not move, we used some strategic reserve fund. Again, that was not a subsidy, that people were not aware of. Why haven't we built reserves over the years?
First and foremost, the infrastructure is there. We've built in Mansa, the country has built in Muchinga, Ndola has, Solowezi has. I'm not sure about Southern Province, but I know Western Province has got. Central Province, we haven't built. Eastern Province has already been commissioned. So here is what we're supposed to do now. When you look at the fuel pump price, it's got a cost line called the Strategic Fuel Reserve. That fund was put at a certain optimal level in order to build a fund, which fund you're supposed to use to intervene in the market when the markets become very hostile.
Like a sinking fund.
Yeah, like a sinking fund. But because of policy reversals as well, that fund was slashed into half, that cost line, because we want to reduce the pump price, and now it has remained a very small amount, which is inside there. And that is the fund which we're supposed to be using. The electricity, the ERB, Energy Regulation Act of 2019, provides for the establishment of an energy fund, which fund up to now has not been operationalized. So we need a fund. That energy fund, which is provided for by the Energy Regulation Act of 2019, must be operationalized. Either fuse them together with a strategic fuel fund, the electricity fund, let all of them go there. Because here is what you do, Costa. For instance, this time we're going for a revision, a price reduction by 3/4, which was a big haircut. One of the other options was to say, let's pass the whole 3/4 to the consumers, which is what we did. Now, 3/4 times the volume that we consume per month, which is about 140, almost 140 liters. That is almost million liters of fuel combined. That is almost 450 million kwacha, which the consumers are not going to spend, which will be, so the consumers in Zambia for this month of March have been saved 450 million kwacha for this month alone, which money they are not going to spend as a result of the haircut which ERB inflicted on the oil industry. So you have to make a decision. Should we pass all this 450 million kwacha to the consumers, or should we go to them and say, look, we have arrested half of this money, 225 million kwacha, we want to put it in the fuel strategic fund, We'll keep it for you there. Let the money sit with the fund managers, private fund managers, so that during days when things begin falling off the rails, we can use part of that money to cushion you. It's still their money. I don't think the people could react.
Are these suggestions being made to government and the ARB? I mean, you sitting as director on that board.
You know, I don't sit on any board at the moment, but look, I've come in my interactions with the government. The little times I've sat on the boards, because we come from the private sector and we try to read the mindset where government wants to go, and we do a lot of papers for government. But at the end of the day, whether they implement that or not, it is but
up to the government.
Yeah, I've done my part, to be honest with you.
Let's get back to where I think the citizens really want to understand. Try to again break down this issue of monthly price review. I think there's a complaint on the fact that the instability, the inability to plan. I've heard of citizens who are even saying, look, if it means taking it up to 60 kwacha per litre, let's take it up there, then it's settled, so that we know that that's the price. Because you cannot plan a business, you cannot plan your cash flows when today it's 35, tomorrow it's 31, and it's bad for business planning.
Yeah, you see, the monthly price review policy, first and foremost, it is not just unique to Zambia. It is also in other countries, but it works well when the markets are stable. It works well when the markets are stable. The challenge that it has faced, I've never seen a policy that has been resisted like this. Almost for 3 years, people are just resisting against it, to the point where the president had to go to the podium. The time they were swearing in the permanent secretary, directed him, we'll go and find a better method of ensuring that this price review cycle is elongated.
Is this the best method? Because we had a quarterly price review before.
The challenges which we are faced with, first of all, if the markets are stable, it is okay, because sometimes you will have long spells of no price change. But the challenge is when it was starting, it was coinciding with the commencement of war in Russia and Ukraine. And so that we saw the prices continuously building up. And so the price was being reviewed every month. And other countries started to subsidize to avoid the exposing the citizens, the shocks. But us, because of the capacity issues, we continued to succumb to the dictates of that. So my take, this policy has been resisted by the people, and there is a policy direction. Go and look at it, go and change it. So we are waiting for the next policy direction in terms of whether it will be 2 months or it will be but it is possible to come up with something better, a better.
As we come to a conclusion, Dr. Chikwanda, let's also look at the larger or bigger picture. Oil, and like you've described, it is a huge global political issue. If you look at the current geopolitical dynamics, and I'm talking about what is now being called OPEC and OPEC Plus, and you begin to look at issues of what we used to know as the traditional West or G20 framework, there's BRICS in the mix. Most of these countries that own the oil wells, the Arabic countries, are now the uranium and gas energy, the pipelines, it's Russia and so on. There seems to be a sort of team up when you look at the BRICS countries. They just admitted new members, especially those Saudi and Abu Dhabi. Are we seeing some economic war around energy, assets? And if this is the case, should we be worried?
Yes, like you have said, oil is a commodity, and energy security is directly related to national security. So each time you are talking about energy, it's a national security issue. And from the days of the Mesopotamia times, when this industry started, it has always been a major political issue. Countries have gone to war because of war. Countries have gone to war because of the pipeline, just because of the pipeline. So it's a major issue. And when you see things like this happening, it means some countries are trying to weaponize the energy market, the energy commodity. It can be weaponized. And there is power in numbers. So when they are aggregating together, one day they will start passing out certain laws, certain trade treaties that may imperil the sustainability prospects for other countries. And this calls for building internal resilience as a country by trying to establish more pathways to other energy sources of energy, and also to invest more in energy diplomacy because of where we are headed to tough times. If you have poorly crafted energy diplomacy policy, you can always find yourself on the wrong footing, which is why you find one country is being sold at a discount of 40%, but they are refusing to give you any discount because, you see, energy diplomacy. And the same like what we have had with Angola. I know people say, no, Angola doesn't have enough refining capacity, and it even imports its own, it exports crude oil, then it imports. That it doesn't matter at all. It doesn't matter. What matters is that that's a powerhouse of hydrocarbon. Give it to me at a steep price. I'm going to refine it somewhere else and land the fuel at a cheaper price in my country. But it's an energy diplomatic issue that we need to navigate and hold very good organic conversations around this hot topic, because if you don't do that, it can give you a lot of challenges.
Finally, in the immediate for 2024, this is only March, and obviously people are complaining about the cost of living and the cost of doing business. So we've been warned that the drought is an emergency. It's a disaster. So we are expecting an energy deficit, but also people are crying about this high price of fuel, the monthly review prices. As an expert, what should we be anticipating this year? What could be some of the mitigation measures the president outlined last week? Are we satisfied that we will be cushioned by some of those measures government has outlined?
First and foremost, the good part is the government has committed to bridging the gap by importing, but also we know that we are going to get from Mozambique, but everyone is rushing to Mozambique, so we cannot get the entire basket that we want from there. That is why I think he said there will also be some rationing. He mentioned that. But the good part is a commitment to import and meet people at their deepest point of need. There are certain things that we need to do also as individuals. First of all, before I come to individuals, to government itself. You see, in 2015, when we had that major crisis, one of the things that we advised as private sector government was, can you enact a law to ban the importation of filament bulbs in Zambia, including their manufacture thereof in this country? And government bought into that advice and implemented it and forced a national migration to energy-saving bulbs. Just out of that strategic move, the country was able to start saving at least 200 megawatts, which is incredibly a lot of power. It's a big hydro scheme if you have to build that. We saved that. But that was not the only thing that was on the sleeves. We were supposed to also visit the issue of solar, the geysers. The geysers inside the home, 60% of your power is heating, that is cooking, and your geyser. So most people use the conventional electric geyser. Our proposal and my proposal to government is that in the short term, pass a law, an SI, ban the importation of conventional electric geysers in Zambia for the next 5 to 10 years. Meaning that you are going to force all new constructions that are coming up to go on the solar geyser. So you are entrenching and accelerating the energy transition. We are going to free up a lot of electricity which should go to economic development in the industry. That can be done. With further incentivizing, we can even entice those people who have got electric geysers to start also migrating. And I always say that, yes, we know that we have got personal fund issues, but Zambians are also very innovative. You find most of our people are on village banks, and you go there when they are breaking the bank, the money that they exchange hands, they can invest in energy saving initiatives. Why don't you get a solar geyser for each member of the village bank over a period of time, and go to the gas stove, so on and so forth? So there is something that we can do as a government there, but at individual level, these are some of the things we need to do, including our behavior in how we consume electricity. They look very small, but Costa, if you are boiling water, you want your cup of coffee, you find most people, they fill the kettle full. They make it the kettle full. You use more electricity. Even when you just want it as a cup of tea, why are you filling the entire kettle full to the full capacity? That is electricity you are spending. Why is it that you leave your appliances on even when they are not being used? Sometimes even television sets and radio stations, radios, they are on even when you are not using them. Why is it that your phone will sleep on the charger throughout the night? It is already 100% charged, it is just on the charger. So all these, they look very small, but when you aggregate them across the country, they are a lot. There are many. Look at, you go to government buildings, you find that their lights are on. Even in offices where people are not, even in the private sector. Now we're saying, please, when you step out of your office, switch off power, switch off electricity, because you're not there. So this Cavaria attitude to things, because maybe they were so cheap, we need to invest a lot in communication strategies to help people that this thing is not just up to government. You can also take total ownership and control that bill. The pressing iron, when taking a shower, when you are applying soap on you, a warm shower, switch off the tap. Why is it water is running when you are not using the water? Why do you have to keep the pressing iron on even when you are folding the clothes or you are looking for one, putting it nicely, whatever? So all these small things, we need to package them and educate our people. Security lights. I was passing the other day around the ZESCO. You see, now we have got what we call motion sensors. You don't have to have your security lights on throughout the night. With the help of a small, cheap such motion sensor installed in there, they will be off. If there is an intrusion, then the lights come on and switch on. All these things we need to tell our people what we are facing is real. We need to arise, join together as a country, and see what we can do for our motherland, Zambia.
Dr. Johnstone Chikwanda, thank you so much for joining me on Costa this evening to discuss the energy crisis amidst the drought that has hit Zambia and indeed the Southern African region.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much, Costa.
That wraps up Costa this evening. My guest has been Dr. Johnstone Chikwanda, an energy expert. We've tackled a number of energy-related issues around hydropower, the diversification, and indeed the pricing issue around, petrol, as well as the pricing model. Remember, you can catch this episode on our online platform. It is YouTube at Diamond TV Zambia. Also on our Facebook thread is Diamond TV Zambia. Thank you so much. Good night, and keep watching.
Costa was brought to you by FQM Trident Limited, a subsidiary of First Quantum Minerals Limited.